Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Foley, roll call, please.
President Kaler, members of the board, please let the record show that all members are present.
Wonderful, thank you. And we're going to have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, 2.1, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Foley, Superintendent's report, please.
President Kaler, members of the board, we begin tonight with our favorite part of the superintendent's report, the points of pride. And we're going to start alphabetical tonight with Cortina Tigers. And so I have the joy of inviting Principal Mrs. Kelly Papke and Vice Principal Ms. Chrissy DeBono to come up and help us celebrate Cortina Tiger points of pride.
Good evening, everyone. Members of the board, cabinet, thank you so much for having us here tonight. This is always one of my favorite things to do, is to be able to recognize the amazing people who make up our schools. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Do you mind holding these? I think I need one more arm. All right, so we're going to begin with our certified teacher recognition. And so if we could please have Heather Bogus come on up. Mrs. Bogus is Cortina's art teacher, but the scope of her impact reaches far beyond the art room alone. In all of my years in education, I have never seen students so excited to attend art class, and it's all due to Mrs. Bogus and her approach with kids. She is a soft-spoken, humbly creative, and positive individual. She brings art to life through fun and engaging projects that allow students to experience success, even if art is not their strength. Heather records her own videos and uses them as part of her instruction. She even started the huge art project on our campus last school year, and the kids absolutely love it. This is a project that all students have an opportunity to partake in. Students have the option of taking a one-question quiz at the beginning of Mrs. Bogus's art class, and then at the end of the quarter, she draws one correct answer from each grade level and chooses which students will help with the huge art project for that quarter. The artwork is then displayed in the library for all to enjoy until the next quarter. Until the next quarter, huge art is ready. It is a tradition that the oldest participant takes the artwork home. So this has been just a great addition to our campus, and in the library, when you go in there, all of the kids get to enjoy the artwork that, even if they weren't a part of it, just to be able to celebrate the hard work of those students. So, and to close, we just want to say, as a teacher who sees all of our students, Heather really does well at holding students accountable, and she intentionally tries to connect with them, even if she only sees them once a week. Heather is truly a positive light at Cortina, and we are so glad that she has chosen to be a Tiger. So thank you, Heather. You are amazing. You're amazing. Do you want her to stay up here? Okay, got to stay up here to take a picture. Here, I can take those back. Okay, thank you for holding them. There we go.
Good evening, everyone, members of the board. Dr. Foley, thank you for having us. I have the proud honor to recognize our next individual. Being my first year here at Cortina, I couldn't think of a more deserving classified staff member for this award. We know her fully as Miss JM, but Miss Jody Muller, would you please come on up and be recognized? Miss JM is Cortina's office manager extraordinaire, also our Jane of all trades. We all know that the school secretary and office manager is the true person who keeps the school running. And this year, more than ever, JM wins the prize for wearing the most hats around our campus. As we know, this year has been unique. We have experienced staff shortages, along with other things that have been unusual and unexpected. She often fills in here and there to help out when needed, but this year in particular, Ms. JM has filled many roles, such as our attendance specialist. She's been our health aide. She's been our administrative clerk, and then, of course, her actual job as office manager. She's also made sure I've eaten lunch on many occasions and drink my water too. She has done a stellar job stepping in to do these multiple roles and offers her service with a smile in every interaction. Her attitude and approach is always, "We got this." Jody is perceptive, she's proactive when it comes to school operations and other happenings. She sees potential problems and steps in to offer solutions. She takes the initiative to make it happen. But most importantly, she is the most compassionate and caring person on our staff who loves everyone, staff, students, and our parents, and does whatever she can to help. Even without being asked, she does it. We couldn't operate without her expertise and the heart that she brings every day to Cortina. Thank you, JM. We love you.
All right. We are proud to recognize our student, Kate Anderson. Kate, can you come on up here? So Kate is a sixth grader at Cortina, and within a few minutes of interacting with Kate, it is easy to see that she is an amazing young lady. She always greets everyone with a smile and a welcoming attitude. As a new student, her peers took to her very easily due to her genuine and warm personality. Kate has an inquisitive and humble spirit. She works hard and isn't afraid of taking academic risks. Kate is an ambassador of kindness, and she embodies all that it means to be a tiger who roars. We are so proud to have you as a student at Cortina. Thank you, Kate. Can we have you tell us who you brought with you tonight?
I brought my family and some of my friends.
Hello, family and friends.
And our final recognition tonight, last but certainly not least, is our parent recognition. At Cortina, we have an amazing group of parents who help support what Mrs. Papke and I do every day. And tonight we have the proud honor to recognize Miss Erin, I don't want to missay your name, Conan, right? Oh. Okay, can you teach me how to say your last name? How do you say your last name? Canine, Ms. Erin Canine. Erin has been a Cortina parent for several years, and she currently serves on our PTO and coaches our cheer team. She's also been known to make an appearance as Stripes the Tiger. As a mom of 2 Cortina students, Erin shows her dedication to the community through her involvement. She shares her culinary talents along with her creative side when organizing special meals and treats for staff, going that extra mile to make it special. Truly extra mile, like quiches for breakfast at 7 a.m. It's delicious. She gives of her time to volunteer as a cheer coach and helps with school events like Make a Difference Day and the Father-Daughter Dance. Her cheerful spirit and positive attitude are extremely contagious. Parents like Erin enhance our schools so much, and we are extremely grateful to have her as part of our community. Thank you, Erin, for all you do for us. This is for you, Erin.
Thank you, Cortina. Now we're excited to celebrate our Power Ranch Points of Pride. Mr. Reuter and Ms. Coda, please come on up.
Thank you, Dr. Foley, President Kaler, members of the board. I'm super, I have so much energy. I'm not so much nervous, but I lied to somebody in the room, actually 2 individuals in the room, so they don't know why they're here. And one of them is my mom, and she won't get mad at me, but Carrie Edwards, one of our teachers, will. So bear with us and hang on tight because we want to celebrate you too. But we're actually going to start. We have our 6th graders at science camp, and our student Tommy Lou is in Prescott right now, and we're going to recognize him, and Mrs. Considine and Miss Edwards and Miss Bernard are with them. So they are going to share with you why Tommy is our Points of Pride recipient. Hey, Tommy.
All right, so we wanted to nominate Tommy because he is a thoughtful and conscientious student. He strives to do his best work and knows when to advocate for himself in order to maintain his own high expectations. Tommy is an integral part of the Power Ranch community. He is one of the lead percussionists in our band, our student council historian, and has a lead role in this year's drama club production. Tommy is always looking for ways to help both peers and adults. He is a student that can be counted on to make new students feel at home, and he is truly a role model to his peers and to everyone at Power Ranch.
Congratulations. Tommy, can you tell us who is behind you?
My dad, Miss Bernard, who's my math teacher, Miss Edwards, my science and social studies teacher, and Miss Constantine right next to me, which is my ELA teacher.
We're very proud of you. Congratulations, Tommy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys. So not all things with learning about being virtual and everything was bad, because that wouldn't have happened a couple of years ago. So we're very blessed to have that opportunity. So before Carrie has too much time to get mad at me, Carrie Edwards, if you could come on up here, please. So at Power Ranch, our Points of Pride is typically this time of year, and we use it along with nominations from our Teacher of the Year. And so Carrie actually had nominated some people and was nominated by quite a few people. And so based on the way our voting was cast, we felt that it was appropriate to recognize you here tonight. So we pulled some strings. You have a lot of people that love you, and we're all here for you. So here's what it says. Shut up. Carrie is an amazing teacher and teammate. She goes above and beyond for students and her team. She builds strong relationships with students and families. She works hard to ensure learning in her classroom and all students are, learning takes place in her classroom and all students are successful and growing both socially and academically. She instills a love in learning in her classroom and gets students excited to come to school. She advocates for what is best for students. Carrie takes on leadership roles on campus and participates in everything she can. That's why she's here tonight, to support Mrs. Garcia. So that's why she came. She is a Panther through and through. Congratulations. So you don't know who's here with you, but maybe now you do. Would you like to introduce them?
So I was just thinking, like, oh, I wish my boyfriend could have been here. Patrick and Jordan, who I said, are you going tonight? And she's like, no.
So thank you, Kim and Mrs. Garcia and Robin and everybody else for coming. And she has former students. My own daughter, Savannah, came to recognize her, along with Jaden. And so thank you, guys.
The next person we are going to recognize is our office manager, Susannah Porter. Susannah loves Power Ranch. She was a parent at Power Ranch first. She was a paraprofessional at Power Ranch, and she moved into our office manager position a few years ago. She takes such pride in her work, and we are so lucky to have her. The staff that nominated her spoke about her communication, support, reliability, and patience. Every morning, she starts the day by putting the big puzzle together and helping figure out coverage for classrooms, for crosswalks, for the cafeteria, and wherever else we need help on campus. Thank you, Susannah, for doing all of this and still finding time to keep a budget, order supplies, schedule pictures, create a yearbook, hire new staff, organize field trips, and the other 1,000,001 things that you do. We're so lucky to have you at Power Ranch. Would you like to introduce your family?
I brought with me my family. I have my husband, Greg, my 2 daughters, Veronica and Vanessa. And glad they're here.
Good job. Thank you so much.
And lastly, what a proud son up here. Joan Reuter, can you please come up here? Surprise, Mom. And your daughters are watching back in New York and Connecticut, too. Oh, I'm going to read. Do you mind holding this? I'll read what people say. Not what I say. All right. So here's what people said about you. So Joan volunteers at Power Ranch 3 days a week. If you're around our neighborhood, you would know that because all the neighbors know when they can and can't ask her to do things around the area. So that's my piece. Mrs. Reuter, and so it's cute when the kids ask if she's my mom or my wife. That's fun. She helps teachers with small group instruction, one-to-one support, making copies, and pretty much whatever else is asked of her. Joan also volunteers a few hours a week in our makerspace, has helped in the cafeteria and in the front office. She knows our students by name, and the kids sure do know her. So thank you for all you do for me and my campus and our students. Would you like to introduce people that came here for you?
Well, you brought me, so I didn't. My daughter-in-law, Lindsay, and my grandchildren, Savannah and Brielle, and my Power Ranch family. I'm glad you're all here.
Oh, thank you. I got her flowers.
You can tell why that is our very favorite part of our superintendent's report. And we will continue with in just a minute with our superintendent's report, but we always offer at this time of the night, for those of you who came to celebrate someone, you are more than welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go and celebrate them and enjoy the rest of your evening if you'd like to. We invite you to do so. So thank you for coming tonight. That was precious. Huh? Chris did a good job. Yeah, he did. That was perfect. President Kaler, members of the board, we'll continue with the superintendent's report. I don't know about you, but that was wonderful. Then always why we love celebrating. When we look to the month ahead, this is the beginning of the very busy spring that begins. And when we look at our calendars and begin to see there's all kinds of upcoming events in the next several months, this is just to highlight a few of the meetings that we have coming over the next month. One of the changes you'll notice on our upcoming superintendent's report was on March 4th, we had scheduled a superintendent's visit to HTA, but there was also the Best Buddies Carnival at the very same time. So what we did is we worked with Mrs. Bacon to move that at a time that wasn't right the Friday before spring break or in the middle of state testing. So we will be going to HTA in May to celebrate and visit them as well, so that we can try to be to as many things as possible in a time of competing calendars. So there's lots of upcoming events, and as you know, more to come and invites to be had. So a busy spring is on the horizon. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you so much. Yes, we after spring break especially, we hit the ground running till the end of the school year. That was a delightful Points of Pride this afternoon. It was fun for the surprises too. Moving on to 4.1, any board comments? Mrs. Wilson.
I was at so much this week. We had signing day at both high schools, and that was fabulous to see those high school seniors sign off on what college they're going to go to. Mrs. Martins did an amazing job at the job fair, and I just have to point out how great that was and how many candidates were there. Mrs. Schultz and I, and along with Mrs. Richards, went to the East Valley School Board information session, and they were able to tell us some really informative things that we got to pass along. And then also the State of Education from Superintendent Hoffman I got to watch. I did not go, but I did get to watch, and that was a fabulous presentation by her. I know there was, Higley High School as well. I went to the choir concert at the church, and that was fabulous. They did a great job. So thank you to all those students, all the teachers who made that possible.
Thank you. Any other board comments? All right, moving on, request to speak. 5.1, we value input from our constituents. This time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-43.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, respond to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your remarks to just 3 minutes. And I have Mr. Marty Bender, please.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to address the community and the board. This is the second board meeting I've attended, and I have to say that the most uplifting part, and I would encourage anyone in our community to attend the first part of these meetings, to see the teachers, to see the students, to see the volunteers, the smiles, the applause. It is very uplifting, so I encourage anyone to come attend that. I'm here tonight to talk about the new bond proposal, of course. Last year I was against the bond. I thought it was too large. I thought the spending plan was too nebulous. Because resources are limited, I wish that the survey would have been done in such a way to have asked respondents to prioritize spending versus saying what's very important, somewhat important. Everything seems important, but we all understand that we're in a universe where we're limited, and so we have to know what the community thinks is the most important and what you all think is most important so that we can align and come to a decision and vote the right way. As it is, we had 80 to 90% of respondents say that they strongly or somewhat support certain items like classroom technology spending, major maintenance spending, and major projects, which is classroom expansion. But 70% strongly or somewhat supported the lesser items, which was paying off the leases, new transportation, and land purchases. And it makes one think that everything is important to everyone, and we all understand that we have to prioritize in some way, shape, or form. The new whittled down plan is $77 million versus $95 million last year. This is slightly less than last year's plan, about 20%, but it still doubles our overall indebtedness, and it increases the interest that the community pays by around $2 million a year. So I'm requesting that if possible, we whittle it down a little bit more. When you look at the 21 plan versus the 22 plan and the categories involved, the spending details you said are going to be released the next meeting, which we're all very interested in that. The devil's in the details. Spending on technology, safety, and security last year was to be $15.5 million. This year, it's been increased to $21.5 million, which is up 39%. I'm interested to hear why that is. The major maintenance is basically flat from last year, about $11 million. And major projects has been increased from $27 million up to $45 million. That's up 67%. So again, I'm very interested to hear the details on that, as I'm sure the community is. I hope that you listen to what respondents told you in question 6 and give us a detailed, solid spending plan that addresses only the critical items for the coming years, so that we can keep the borrowing currently to an absolute minimum and keep our powder dry for the future, as I had said last time. And I hope the illustrations show not only the best case scenario, but also a moderate or a worst case scenario, so that we can see how current borrowing would affect the least financially secure taxpayers in case things don't go as well as we hope. Again, I appreciate your all time and everything that you do for the community. We're with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Moving on, 6.0. I move that we approve consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.10.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
President Kaler?
Yes.
Members of the board, I'm going to have Tyler do a quick introduction based on your passing of the consent agenda.
Yeah, President Kaler, members of the board, with the approval of the consent agenda item, you approved item 6.8, which is the approval of the award of the construction manager at risk, or CMAR as we like to call it, for Higley High School to Chase Building. We have 2 representatives from Chase tonight who came in attendance. And we will look forward as a district to working with Chase on this project and continue to evaluate what Higley campus needs within the budget that's been set aside. So again, we look forward to working with Chase and just wanted to acknowledge them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. That said, tomorrow night we have another community meeting at Higley High School. I believe that's at 6:00 p.m. So we, of course, invite all the Higley community to come and enjoy the presentations and their input. So we'll probably be seeing more of you both. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and congratulations. All right, we're going to move on to Mr. Tyler Moore and the second review of the 2022 bond proposal.
All right, looks like just me on the agenda tonight, but good evening,
It's the
President.
Tyler Moore Show again.
It's the Tyler Moore Show.
President Kaler, Vice President Anderson, and members of the board. This evening, we'll take a look at the second review of the 2022 bond proposal. First on the agenda is a review of the bond survey results, as we discussed. We'll review each question asked and summarize the results for each of the 6 questions we sent out to staff, parents, and the community. Some of the questions had open-ended responses, and for those we have provided a summary of themes from those questions and some of the takeaways that we've gathered. Next, we'll discuss the basis of the 2022 bond categories, in which we'll explain lessons learned from last year, as well as important takeaways from the survey that we'll consider in the 22 bond. Third, we'll look at the summary of what we're proposing for the 2022 bond. We'll also review the highlights of these categories and why we feel this proposal not only meets the needs of our students and staff for the next 5 years, but also takes into consideration the tax impacts to the community. And then finally, we'll review the upcoming schedule as we've done with all our financial presentations. So diving into the survey results, question 1 asked, which schools or school does your children or child attend? Select all that apply. So if you add these percentages up, it's going to equal more than 100. That's because there's more parents do have children that attend multiple schools. So if someone's checking the numbers, that's why. The survey received just over 900 responses in total. The highest percentage, the highest percentage came from Higley High School, representing over 17% of the total respondents with 160. Moving down the list, you can see the representation throughout the district. Second on the list, you'll see NA, that at 16%. That represents community members that took the survey that do not have children within their school. One note, we made a conscious effort to really get this survey out to the Trilogy community. And we do believe, Ms. Teresa Joseph did make contact with Trilogy, and their responses are included in this survey, and you'll see their responses as we move forward. All others there, it just summarizes the remaining schools at 14%. So, question number 2 asked, in order to help us revise the previous categories from the 2021 bond election, please indicate whether you support or did not support the following categories. So in this question, we listed the categories as we presented them in last year's proposal. Starting at the top, we proposed in our bond last year to purchase one of the 2 leased middle schools. Looking at the results, it's clear this was a sticking point in the proposal, with only 41% strongly supporting this category. I will note this category has the highest percentage in the need more information. As we know, this is a complex topic. We've discussed this several times, but the complexity of this lease is not traditional. I will note if you combine the strongly support and the somewhat support percentage, the total is 63%, which looks and sounds better, but as we progress further through this presentation, you'll notice a theme with the leases. The next category was major projects, which showed good support at 59%, being strongly supported. Next, technology had the highest strongly support percentage among all categories at 67%. Major maintenance, this category had the second highest strongly support at 65%. Moving to the transportation category, we find this is the lowest strongly supported category, as well as the highest do not support percentage at nearly 20%. It's clear this is not a priority of either our community, our staff, or our survey respondents. And then lastly, in 2021, we proposed a budget category for a land purchase in the northern part of our district due to projected enrollment growth. Survey respondents indicated this was not a priority, with only 38% strongly supporting this category. But this does kind of lead us into the 2022 categories and our question 3. So question 3 asks, please read each potential category for the 2022 potential bond and indicate your level of support for the category. What you see represented on the screen there is a snippet from our enrollment projection that Applied Economics did. It's now going on 2 years. You'll notice this graph is already outdated. What they projected in these 24 to 25, the 5-year period from 24 to 29, is extremely outdated. The building on Warner is already well above what they projected to be. And so we're working, we did have them go ahead and start to redo this graph and update it with those new builds and permits that have been taken out. But when reviewing this category that we proposed in 2021, we took a deep dive internally within the district budget, as we're doing holistically through M&O, and you'll see later tonight, capital and bond. It was one category you will not see in this next question. It is the land purchase that I'm alluding to. We know that the northern part of our district is going to see the most growth in the next 5 to 8 years. The district currently owns a piece of land that we've kind of discussed. Both you've seen it on an executive session agenda item, and we're currently looking at researching a land swap to better utilize both internal resources that we have available to us, as this category was clearly not supported in the 2021 election. More information will come on this as we continue to research what both our current land will appraise for, and if it's possible to land swap to a more advantageous piece of land that would be better suited for an elementary school or a new school build. So transitioning to the survey results for the 2022 category, we can see that the middle school leases, similar to the 2021 question, it is clear that there's a lack of support and knowledge regarding the middle school leases. 40% strongly support this potential category, and 20%, again, need more information. The complexity of these lease agreements, combined with the cost of the potential buyout, works against the district in relation to other bond categories that provide tangible district needs. This is why you will not see this proposed as a category in the 2022 bond. I will note, since I was hired now over a year ago, I knew about these leases. In fact, it was and still is well-known example of what not to do regarding public leases for either constructing buildings and or purchasing buildings. The initial conversation surrounded about using bonds to authorize to pay down these leases. Now it's clear that the bond avenue is not the direction that we will be going, both because there's no support for that, but because we want to be conscious of our taxpayers as well. The district is now focused on working with the third-party owner, which was JMF Higley, and looking to move these leases under the district, which would then save millions in regarding to fee savings, as well as enabling the district to then refinance those current bonds, also potentially saving millions or more money on interest earnings. So as a reminder, those leases were taken out in 2012, so interest rates are not the same as they are in today's market.
Mr. Moore, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Since we're looking at removing that piece from our bond, is there something we can put together just in general that educates our community on these leases, what it does to our district, the financial impact it has to our district, how it prevents us from doing many other things that from M&O or capital, because we have this additional cost, and we've talked about it several times, that no other district has. So when people try and compare what we pay our teachers, what we pay for our maintenance, what we just operating costs and different things, no other district has this expense that we do. That has to come off the top, and so we start less than what we would have to offer. So if there's just some in general information that we need to educate our community, whether it's on the bond or not, to understand the negative financial impact that this lease has for our district. Is there something that, and for people to understand, we don't own those schools. They're not ours. So if there's some information that we can put together just to have available, have on our website in general, so that people can understand that we are in a different situation than any other district from when we entered into these leases, which, I mean, we won't necessarily go into the devil is in those details. When we entered into these leases, as our community approved a 40-year lease, but they didn't approve the financing, and here we are with this, and it is a financial burden for us. So I understand the community response regarding our leases and removing it from this bond election. But I do think we need to have something out there that does educate our community on the impact of these leases. And as long, I appreciate, and I know you've worked so hard since you've come here, and that has been a question over and over again. How can we help free up money that these leases are taking? And what I know we've worked over this and over this, the long-term cost of it, what the actual cost is as we continue with these leases.
President Kaler, Board Member Reese, without stealing any of his thunder, I think one of the things that we're going to get to here when we talk about it in a minute is one of the things that came clear to us in those comments is a true misunderstanding of what funding bonds can and cannot be used for. And quite honestly, this is quite complex and very difficult to explain. But one of the themes we heard over and over and over again is what is the essential? What is the most needed? What are the greatest priorities? Trust, transparency, clarity, trying to make those clear. It was clear that that was not going to be how we would address the greatest needs that we have long term. However, one of the things we feel is that through this process, when we do explain, it's going to be an opportunity for us to address some of that misinformation and misnomers and understanding the uniquenesses of Higley. Because when you do scale it down and you're talking about your priorities, you're looking at your greatest growth, your greatest needs that you can use this funding for. Again, we asked the community, we want them to see that we heard them and we're listening and we're responding to that. And through this process, we learned a little bit more about other things we need to help people make sure they understand, but it's going to take us time, I think, to help them understand and addressing the greatest need. And we'll be following the theme that we reoccurringly heard from multiple people in multiple ways that he will continue to kind of go in further into. But Higley is unique and it is very different. But being that this one is so complex, it is clear in the feedback that we got is this one won't garner support.
President Kaler, I want to just echo what Board Member Reese has said. I read all 38 pages of the question, both 5 and 6. I went through and read every single one of the responses. It was an underlying theme. They want to know more about this middle school, what happened. A lot of people, some of them weren't even here when this middle school project, I'll say, started. All the board members have switched out since then. So I think it is something to just echo that we need to get some information out to our community about these leases so they're under the understanding that we are on these leases, just so they know where we're sitting. Thank you.
President Kaler, the misinformation was the entire theme of reading the survey results. Are you going to elaborate on the third-party direction that you want to take with removing it from the bond? And is it decided that you're going to completely remove it from the bond, the middle schools? I just think information and misinformation is what's caused the problem, not necessarily being against the middle schools, but just having no idea and just listening to what hearsay, too.
Yeah, President Kaler, Member Schultz, I think at this time is clear, like in this proposal, we would not garner, this would hinder our chances of passing a bond. And I would hate to risk losing out on other capital needs that we need in our district over the next 5 years at the expense of one item that we've already been paying for 8 years. This is not to say, I swear, it's weekly that I'm talking to our bond attorney to try to figure out a solution for this. If it's not a bond, this is not to say either, too, that we don't propose in the next 5 years another bond to take out this lease. But it is clear at this moment in time, the middle school leases are not going to garner support. And I think taking a 5-year break, or we're continuing to budget for this yearly and annually, but reapproaching this maybe in 5 years, once we have established a new level of trust with our community, we're still trying to breach and get out of the Birdwell era and build trust within our community fiscally and from a leadership standpoint. And yeah, the general theme was just misinformation, but I think I can certainly do just a straight information agenda item on the leases as I get more information on potentially bringing those under the district and talking about refinancing and what options we have to reduce our annual obligation from 4.4 million to a lower amount. So yeah, that's my comments on the leases. So
thank you for working on that. I am with Board Member Schultz that the hard part for me is understanding, and I know it's hard to communicate, and it is a very complex situation, but I also look at it financially for our district, excuse me, what we would be able to do in our higher priorities over the next 5 years by being able to use these funds and at least pay one of them off frees up our regular funds to be able to, I want to kind of say self-supportive for those projects, for those maintenance concerns, and that we would be able to handle those expenses on our own easier out of our normal budgets without this lease payment. And so I look at that too, that with the 5-year, I think we would get more out of it financially on our own by being able to pay this lease off. I think the district would be financially better to be able to handle those major issues, maintenance, and not just major, but our day-to-day, because what happened, and we're handling this, and you're doing a great job, is that some of those day-to-day things didn't get handled, and then they become more of a major issue. So I know it's hard for people to understand, and I've had more years of understanding this lease than most, but it concerns me to have to continue to rely more on a bond in the future, just as individually, to rely more on a bond in the future, that could help provide us some financial freedom without having to rely so much on bond and overrides, because it would free more financial resources that we already get up.
And President Kaler, Member Reese, one option we were looking at was a potential 2-question option on our ballot, which would separate the middle school leases from our core ask that we will present later tonight. That is a legal option. We can do that. We would have to prepare multiple tax tables, and we've already looked at that, so I do have that ready. If you would like to see that in the next board meeting, I can certainly present that option. Seems like there's a consensus, yes.
I would like to see it,
Yes.
at least as an option. I would
will
like to
prepare
see
that.
it just as an option.
And I know that your road shows you put together were very poorly attended, and so I'm hoping we can reach the community to convey the message, and like Board Member Reese said, with to educate them more, so it's not social media and where you're getting your misinformation from over and over again.
President Kaler, Board Member Schultz, one of the things we talked about is we may have fewer road shows and we may go to more community, parent-teacher organization events that are meetings that are established so that we can speak more. We'll get on their agendas, we'll be part of staff meetings, and a little bit more explicitly attending those events. We'll have road shows, but maybe not as many road shows. We'll do more attending of events where those are already in process. And what we can do is be part of the end of that, so that we aren't a captive audience, but we're holding them for factual information where we provide that.
I love that.
Mr. Moore, I echo some of these sentiments as well. I know that social media is probably the biggest place of misinformation, but yet we could use it for good, and we could make our own videos that are factual and get those out as well. So I think there's ways that we can reach the community in a positive way as well with some basic facts too. So people like quick and fast, so they have to be short and sweet to the point. But
Mr. Moore, TikTok, doing a TikTok
yes,
dance?
we could start your own TikTok channel, the Tyler Moore Show TikTok. No, but in all seriousness, I think that social media area can damage us more than help us in some ways because the misinformation is being spread.
Yeah.
I do have one quick question. It was a few slides back. You said we had around 900-ish people respond. That seems extremely low to me. And I get it. You guys did everything you could to put it out to people. I just want to point that out to our community that we have 60,000 voters, correct? Ish. And only a handful, I feel like. Only that 900 responded. So it is information that we are using to decide future, and it's sad to me that that was such a low, and I don't think it was anything you guys did, it was just something to point out to the community.
So President Kaler, Member Wilson, I will note, if a member of the community wanted to do this survey, because we hosted this internally, they would have had to navigate to our website. And while we tried to advertise this as best we can, this was an internal effort within the district. So, not to say that's the reason why the numbers are so low, but just to point that out.
Mr. Moore, the survey's closed, correct?
It is closed, yeah. All right, picking up where we left off. So coming down to category 2 on here, technology. Again, we noticed this was the highest strongly supported category. It was 64% being strongly supported. It also has the lowest percentage of need more information, indicating that there's little to no questions regarding technology. This is a known need for the district. Next, safety and security is the second highest and strongly supported category with 61%. The support for safety and security is very parallel with technology. Fourth down the list is major maintenance category, which again has a lot of support with 59% responding strongly supported and 23% responding somewhat support. The total of those two categories is over 80% in the general support for that category. Fifth down the list is the transportation category. It's clear this category is not, again, a high priority of our community, with only 35% of the responding strongly supporting that category. Lastly, the final proposed spending category is major maintenance. Over 53% of respondents strongly supported this category. 22% somewhat supported this category. This category did have the second highest votes and need more information, which we intend on presenting at the next board meeting. Moving forward.
President Kaler, Tyler, I have a question for you, and I apologize if this has already been given to us. The transportation, the new fuel-efficient school buses, what sort of information was out there? Like, why were we wanting that? What was the benefit of switching to that? Were the big cost savings or the maintenance? Like, what's the benefit of having that in our district?
Updating our fleet.
I didn't go to any of the road shows, so if that was given, I apologize.
No. President Kaler, Vice President Anderson, that would be simply updating the fleet, adding more to our fleet as we use it to support the transportation and driving. It's one of the capital components that it's where you buy those, and ongoing buses is a part of how you keep your fleet from all aging out at the same time, and it's part of a maintenance component. We have some that are, and hence this is one of the things that have historically been part of the bond proposals.
Yeah, I think I remember now talking about. So these would be replacing, like you said, replacing the old ones, and then I'm assuming, do they cost more initially, but the savings is more beneficial? Is how you propose for that? Okay, thank you.
I believe one of our buses didn't even have air conditioning at one point, so we had updated to all have air now, which I thought was a huge thing a few years ago, but that was a big deal that all of our buses didn't have air. And so I think that's something that our community probably wasn't aware of, that And those buses do get old, and we cannot buy parts efficiently anymore. Those parts are unavailable. They're either unavailable or at such a high rate, just like if you were going to replace an air conditioner and you have a 30-year-old air conditioner, it's not going, the parts, you can't find them. So I think that was part of it. Am I misspeaking, Dr. Foley?
President Kaler, Board Member Wilson, that was probably prior to me being in this capacity. I am sure that if that was shared with you, that was true. I am not aware at this moment that that is a condition that we have, a concern that we have, but I know that maintaining them and ensuring that they're all in working order and that we have new buses is absolutely an important component. And it's also your whole fleet, your white buses, your vehicles that are used for the district. I am sure that that was a problem that at this moment I do not believe is currently a problem.
So all of our buses have air now. So that's a fantastic feat that we have overcome.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm assuming in other districts, it's more of a concern because there's more distance traveled. We have such a smaller district. There's not, we use buses, but usually it's easier for
President Kaler, Vice President Anderson, we've got planes, trains, and automobiles. Our interesting 24 square miles has multiple components that make transportation one of the things that is an essential component for safety. And therefore, although you're a small space, because of the transportation you provide to prevent people from crossing train tracks or other things, does increase your travel.
All right, moving on. The question number 4 asks if the 2022 bond proposal results in a potential minimum property tax increase, how likely would you be in support? I'm not going to spend much time on this because, as you'll see later in this presentation, we're proposing to maintain, if not decrease the tax rate. If we do add that component in of a second question with the middle school leases, we may be looking at multiple tax charts because then you add a variable. If one question passes, then you're going to go in this tax rate. If 2 questions pass, then you'll go to this tax rate. So I will bring all that information at the next meeting so you guys have that. With that said, the 53% of the respondents said they would be very likely to support a bond if it were to result in a minimal tax rate increase, and the remaining 46% either somewhat likely or unlikely. Question 5 asks what modifications would need to be made to the 2022 bond proposal in order to increase your level of support. So this was an open-ended question, allowing the respondents to share their modifications in more detailed fashion. Summarizing those responses, we came away with some key takeaways. So number 1 was transparency. The main areas in which the district needs to address transparency are, I keep pushing this question, are providing a detailed spending plan for each bond category. The detailed spending plan needs to include where the money is going, what schools are receiving bond funds, and ensuring the bond funds are going where they said they would be going. Another area in transparency is, which I thought we did a good job at addressing, was clearly explaining the financial impact to taxpayers. But again, we can address that with a clearer slides and or information indicating the level of tax impact to various housing, residential property values, et cetera. So the second takeaway addressed in the proposal, in the proposed spending amount, and how it was too high. So the main areas regarding this takeaway include ensuring the district was only proposing needs that are of high priority. Also, there were several comments about how inflation in the current state of the economy is affecting several of our finances of our families within our district and our community members. Likewise, the district should be sensitive to those impacts and look at its spending. I do want to note that with both the open-ended questions, we are just summarizing the responses. I will respond to some of these areas that indicate there is a misunderstanding of how schools are funded, the rules regarding school bonds, and how they function. So question number 6, the last question, asked, please share any comments or suggestions regarding the proposed bond, the proposed 2022 bond categories. Similar to question 5, I'll summarize those with some key takeaways. So first, a key common theme Fiscal Transparency, that included much of the same as question 5. A detailed spending plan is needed, and it needs to indicate where the money is going and what schools will be affected. There was again a common theme regarding explaining the financial impact to taxpayers, and as I alluded to, I will ensure that is very clear in this next presentation. Second, improved communication was a common suggestion regarding the 2022 proposed bond. You did allude to social media and maybe making it more of a social media presence from the district in terms of factual information can be a possible resolution to this. And also communicating the detailed spending plan with clear examples and messaging, as well as possible illustrations of what schools could potentially receive, or illustrations regarding class builds, etc. And then lastly, there was an overwhelming number of comments regarding increasing security measures at our sites. Higley has had a fair share of security incidents lately, and it is important not to only the district to ensure our students and staff are safe while on campus, but is a clear priority of our community. Okay, so that summarizes the bond survey. Again, we thank everybody who took time and filled out that survey. We're taking the input into consideration and through this process. So transitioning to what I'm calling lessons learned and some common themes from what we're basing our proposed categories on. First, it's clear there's a misunderstanding about how schools are funded and why districts ask for bonds. A common request in the bond survey was increasing teacher pay, and while our goal is to, as a district, to provide a competitive pay for all staff, voter-approved bonds are capital funds and cannot be used for teacher compensation or any staff compensation. Second, the leases, as I discussed earlier, are a frustration of many. They're very confusing and difficult to provide an understanding to our common, or anybody really, in that regard, on what they mean to the district and what the impact is. Third, the district is still in a state of rebuilding trust within the community and its staff. While the district has officially and legally established closure to the middle school lease wrongdoings from the Birdwell era, we continue to work on rebuilding that trust. One way we intend to do that is through this proposed bond program and through transparency and a scaled back approach. We have reviewed the 2021 proposed bond and squeezed down categories into what the district needs to maintain the current classroom conditions as well as address growth over the next 5 years. As I alluded to earlier, the district is utilizing its internal resources to fund previous items proposed in the 2021 bond, such as land. While we don't have a lot of resources to work with, we're focusing on maximizing what we have in the interim. What is clear, the district will still have large capital needs over the next 5 years, and the phase-down bond proposal is aimed at addressing those greatest needs. So with that, we'll look at what we're proposing for the 2022 bond. The 2022 proposed bond categories are a culmination of the bond survey results, utilizing our internal resources when possible, and focusing on our absolute greatest needs. The big items you will notice that are not being proposed in the 2022 bond are the ones I've already touched on, the possible purchase of a middle school, which I will add that to the next one though, as well as the need for land. While I believe, again, there's a misunderstanding of the lease, knowing it's hurting the district fiscally, at this time, we just don't feel it's the right time to include it in this proposal.
President Kaler, members of the board, and again, he will be talking on this a little bit further in when we talk about our next presentation, when we're talking about capital. One of the things we were looking at it when we were looking at those themes, and I know that we keep in mind that we're hearing from a targeted population, but this population took the time to share with us their opinions. We were grateful that this time when we sent these to our families who would be most impacted by our growth, I mean, when we're talking about our potential growth, our ability to have buildings, facilities, resources, technology, safety, security, the things that we use bond funding for. What our fear was, we have a real need. The amount of money that we have every year allocated to this is so minimal that potentially jeopardizing the ability to have the funding to address those most immediate needs is a concern. And so your administrative team is trying to look at how do we balance the feedback we got with perceptions, with also trying to be very thoughtful about our reality and our current growth needs that we plan for. Just as you know, these things take multiple years to fruition, and the planning for allocation of those resources starts now and moving forward. And these are some challenging times as we talk about the different pots of funds, from budget to M&O to aggregate expenditure limit to capital. These are challenging pieces. We're also wanting to hear our community, with those who responded with concerns, mistrust. This has been a challenging time, and Higley has unique challenges that no other district has during this challenging time. So one of the things we're trying to do is be very thoughtful, explore all options, hear what we need, but make sure we set ourselves up so that we are able to address those needs coming forward. We hear you, though, in wanting to explore potentially 2 questions, and we can take a look at that. But when we looked at the initial feedback and looked at what we saw, our thought was this is our safest bet to ensure that we would likely have a proposal pass on the areas based on the feedback we received. Wanting to go toward being able to be received as we've heard you, and building trust and transparency. Obviously, that is something we really want to be sure that we address.
Mr. Moore, I think I asked this before, but I wasn't sure what you said. The alternate option that you were talking about, buying the leases and putting them into Higley, I can't remember exactly what you said. You said you were going to tell us a bit more about that next time, or
you're exploring
in this?
Yeah, President Kaler, Member Schultz, we're still, that is a conversation that's ongoing right now.
So it's just in the initial phases?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before I bring anything back, I would like to have all information. Much like the land swap, there's a lot of information gathering, but the lease it's been an ongoing process on whether legally in the lease agreement we can essentially buy out JMF Higley, who's the owner of the leases, and bring it under the district. And so that's an ongoing conversation. You've all seen the lease document. I'm not reviewing that. Our attorney is reviewing that and ensuring that is legal. And before we do anything regarding that, we would bring it back to the board.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to go into the details of this bond proposal. As I alluded to on the next board meeting, I will have a detailed budget for each of these categories. Much of these are the same core needs of the district that you saw in the 2021 proposal. We have adjusted the dollar amount slightly. The biggest dollar amount adjustments in major projects, and that is due to a lot of the enrollment growth in the north, in which we are projecting we'll have to build another school earlier within the next 5 years. Again, I'll touch on these in a detailed fashion in the next meeting. So some of the highlights of this proposal include the following. So the total bond amount of $77 million, which is a decrease from the 2021 proposal. I can confidently say there will be no increase in the tax rate as our assessed valuation has increased. As I alluded to in the first bond presentation, we can ensure that this new debt would not result in a tax increase to our community. It may potentially result in we may be able to reduce the tax rate, which would be, again, a benefit of this proposal. The bond proposal impacts every student in school over the next 5 years. We have worked at addressing the inequities as well as ensuring every student and staff has an adequate facility to teach and learn in. This proposal has a cost benefit of also reducing maintenance and energy costs. As we know, when equipment goes beyond its useful life, as you alluded to, Ms. Anderson, with transportation, the same thing is for our facilities. It costs more to operate said equipment, and therefore by replacing those items well past their operating life, there's an indirect savings to the operating budget because they operate on a more efficient basis. Finally, the bond proposal will ensure Higley Unified remains the destination of choice for our families and allow us to continue to provide education in our current facilities for our students and staff.
Mr. Moore, please remind me, we are tasked, even though they're not our buildings, we are tasked with repairs and maintenance of the middle schools?
Yeah, so that's complicated as well. We technically pay into a capital repairs fund, but unfortunately we are not privy to use that at the current moment because of the lease documents. When they were signed, they obligated us to a 40-year capital replacement plan, and so none of that meets our current needs, so we have to fulfill those needs currently. As part of the research that we're doing, we are trying to reevaluate and tap into those funds to utilize those to address those two middle schools, but currently we are not privy to those funds that we are currently paying into.
Okay, so so the bond money for the major maintenance that could be used on those middle schools?
We're actually not proposing. I feel confident that we can, by the time this would pass and we'd be able to sell bonds, we are not proposing to have any capital repairs or maintenance funded from the bond for those two middle schools. We believe that we'll be able to tap that capital repairs fund by that point in time.
Great.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
President Kaler. Dr. Foley, in the past, I've read through, obviously I mentioned I read through these. People have said they've experienced where a bond has passed and then the money just kind of dissolved. Is there any way that we can create maybe a website or a chart that says, here's, if this were to pass, just in the future, just so we have some transparency for our community, hey, go to this website, and it'll say, this is how much money we got, this is what we used it on, A, B, and C, this is what it cost. Just so then they're more, I know we do this a lot in our board meetings, but a lot of people don't know how to access the information or don't watch the board meetings, don't come to the board meetings. So if there's any way we can get the information out to our voters, so then they feel more confident with us. So because it was a big underlying theme, the lack of transparency and where our money is going. And I think having something like that might be useful.
President Kaler, Board Member Wilson, point well taken. One of the things annually we have to do too is come and do these presentations. One of the things we've talked about is how important it is to capture that information on our website, even to the point of we are also talking about infographics of how we can show by school, by category, basically what you'll get and how you'll get and when you'll get it and how much. And those are the kind of things that visually help explain it and then also then would match our annual presentations to you on how the funding is being spent. So I think that there are a lot of ways that we can help make that clear, particularly with your administrative team here is doing a very different process than may have historically been done with how we evaluate need, how we prioritize need, what is our decision-making tree, what are those priorities. In just a minute, we're getting ready to go into the capital budget, of which this is the second year that you have had a capital budget that is so explicit in where and how the money is being spent. And that has kind of been the theme under Tyler and leadership. And with the support of your administrative team. So I think that transparency and straightforward where we're spending, how we're spending has been a theme that we have done over the last year and will continue to do. It is clear in the feedback we've received how we share this information is very important.
President Kaler? I love that idea to be able to show it. And one of the things I think would be if we showed a percentage of how we're a visual, then people would see like a progress report. And then when it's 100% done, like, thank you, for the bond to show that it's being done. That way they have a visual and can just see where we are at in the plan.
President Kaler? We haven't done this in a while, and maybe it's worth going back to on doing at least an annual mailer. We used to send out an annual report. It was very nice, colorful, and it went to all the households in within our district. And while I would like to see something quarterly, but at least annual, like Mrs. Wilson was saying, that when we do these annual reports, if we can send some type of mailer out with these reports that show the snapshot that will show what we're doing, and then obviously have for more information and being able to direct them so it could be more detailed. But with hearing, you know, and reading, there is a lack of trust and people don't know. People don't know, but the information is out there. It is. The presentation you do for our bond and our override, that's on our website. You put our annual budget on our website. Even our monthly report we get, financial report is on our website. That information is there, and people aren't going to it, and I get it. I'm not one who I wonder what they're doing. I'm not one to do that either. I'm just gonna say, I don't know, but I'm not gonna be one to go out and search that information. But at least with a mailer, we're putting it in front of them. And they can look at it, and most of the time they're gonna at least peruse it and then toss it. I get it. But I think it's very important for a trust perspective that we are being transparent. We aren't hiding anything. We get more detailed financial information now than we ever have. These presentations, and how many times you go over our M&O budget presentation, how many times you go over our override or our capital presentations. We, as a board and as our community, are getting more financial information than we have ever had. And in some cases, more financial information than some people can even understand. But it's there. And so it may be to our benefit. I know there's a cost involved, but it may be to our benefit that we start doing at least an annual mailer to get that in the hands of our entire community. And maybe with the assurance of, with this new bond, maybe we do send a quarterly report out to all of our community via mail with information that they can connect and get more details on our website. But I think that's one of the first steps of rebuilding trust. We are getting this information to you. We're not trying to withhold anything. And it's here, it's available, and now we're taking one step further to put it in front of you.
I remember those mailers, but I also, and I love that you bring the information to people. You don't have to rely on them being super proactive and trying to make sense of everything. It is over information, and no, we're not always going to understand everything. But I do recall a lot of concern about the expense for those mailers, especially whenever the resources in schools weren't being given, and it seemed like you can always construe that money's going to the wrong place. So that would be my concern in that situation.
I like the idea, but, sorry, President King. Maybe an email would be more cost efficient or something, which I know, or some sort of, get the information out without sending them in, because they just are so expensive.
This would reach our entire community, not just our school community. That was the difference, is it went out to the whole district. And we're reaching our school communities as best as we can through email and as we can see through the survey, but we're not reaching our entire community. And like Mrs. Wilson said, there's a lot more voters out there than that took the survey, and it's probably a theme. It's a snapshot, but it's probably an overwhelming theme. So, and I agree, Mrs. Anderson, there was a lot of discussion, and now we have, we're utilizing our own print shops here too, and our sites have what they need now. I mean, they don't have everything, that's why we're talking about this, but back then too, parents were sending in paper for their classrooms and, things like that. So we're in a much better position to, I would hope that it wouldn't be we're taking away from where we're trying to provide. So,
President Kaler. Oh, sorry. Were you finished? Okay. Can we have like maybe a cost is sent in the superintendent's report on how much a mailer would cost us? I don't remember ever seeing a cost on those, so I have no idea if it's how much in the scale of things it would cost. So if we could have that, that would be fantastic.
President Kaler, Board Member Wilson, no problem. We have done mailers, and so we can show you the extent of it. And there's different types of mailers and costs. One of the things now, too, with QR codes, you could send something smaller that links to an electronic website, web page that allows that so that you're not printing as much. So there are all kinds of different options, but we can include in the superintendent's report an example sample. And our PR department really does have a budget for these kind of things. Now, not a huge budget, but that's one of the things that we've done a really good job at. The other thing, I'm sitting here smiling as we're talking because myself and your cabinet team have been immersed in the work of strategic planning. And one of the things in there is communications and fiscal transparency and protocols. These are some of our strategic anchors in which we're developing action steps based on feedback we're getting from our stakeholders as work that may have been done but needs to continue to be done even better. And will fit into the work that we're doing as we align the work that's coming forward that we are actually very excited to share with you in April when we bring it back to you. But this fits perfectly into the work that we're doing with our strategic planning and our goals and visioning for the future. So yes, more information can be coming, and yes, communication and fiscal transparency is a key piece, and we're going to be looking at ways that we do that, because trust and being able to share your perspective, being heard, sharing the information in multiple ways. Some people like to read it, some people like to hear it. We're going to try and be able to provide that response.
And I will say, President Kaler, members of the board, that we are working. I will have to give kudos to the PR team. Like they are doing. We have some cool things coming up. Some cool infographics that are. If you don't want to read into the fine details of each number, these will pop. These will be for that person. And we're working hard to update the website to be more transparent and also have more detail, easier to read charts, like you mentioned, Ms. Schultz, percentages of spend, et cetera. So we do hear you, and we are working on making those adjustments because that clearly was a concern in the survey, as well as Dr. Foley alluded to in the strategic planning. So with that, this is kind of the rundown of what we'll finish the bond information on. So the 23rd, as I alluded to, I will bring back a detailed budget of what I propose. I'll also add in the additional of a possible question 2 with the implication of the middle school leases. Both, we can say, one school and both schools, so we can look at multiple tax tables and how that will impact the overall bond. And then also, in terms of communication, we are looking at maybe scaling down the road shows and doing more going to schools and being there for those PTO or staff meetings. If they won't come to us, I'll come to them. So, we're looking at different ways to get the message out regarding the bond. So, with that, that concludes my presentation. And
any other questions or concerns on the bond for Mr. Moore?
One quick question. Sorry, President Kaler. How do we get our parent or the older community involved in making the decision? Because I heard a lot, the 55 and older, they wanted more information, more. Do you guys have a plan on how to get them more involved or more on board, maybe?
President Kaler, Board Member Wilson, one of the things you noticed is that there was an influx in responses because, again, we networked with that community leader. She had been out ill, and so it delayed it for a little bit, but when she got it out to her team, we were able to get that information. So obviously working with them to figure out the best way to come to provide that information to them, whether it is at one of their events or specifically held there for them, and working with them directly on how to best get the information to them in the way they're interested. They've also been very clear when they've told us, no, this is not the time and this is not the place. So being sensitive to working with our our contact in that community that helped us get the information out to plan events will be how we want to proceed.
Great, thank you.
Yes, our older community, they've made it clear in some of their comments. They're also very supportive of us, but they're also our most faithful voters in our community as well. And so they do make a huge impact on things that happen in Higley. They are the faithful voters, and they understand the importance of a vote. So, okay, Mr. Moore, you can just keep on moving on. We are moving on to 7.2.
Keep the ball rolling. In terms of fiscal transparency, we have the first review of the 23 capital outlay budget. Looking at the capital budget highlights, you'll notice that they are very similar to the M&O budget highlights that we covered at the last board meeting. The reason for this is our main capital fund, the District Additional Assistance, or DAA, as it's also known as, is state-driven by a state budget formula. So like we covered in the M&O budget highlights, we do not anticipate any additional COVID relief funding for the, any additional COVID relief funding. For M&O items, neither capital as well. The increase in 2% of ADM will also affect the DAA budget in a positive way, much like the M&O budget. This will be the second year in which the DAA fund will be fully restored from recession-era cuts from the state. As a reminder, the DAA fund was one of the funds that was cut back in the 2008-2009 recession. It took 13 years to restore this funding back to 2008-2009 funding levels. So we are only being funded in our state allocated capital budget at the 2008-2009 levels.
So that's why the AEL's back.
Correct. It is a portion
of
the
we funded you fully for the last 2 years, so let's throw another wrench in there. Okay.
Yeah, this restoration is playing a little bit into the AEL aggregate expenditure limit issue as well. Unlike small inflation with M&O, the DAA is not subject to inflation. So just another example of the outdated K-12 funding formula. And just a note, charter schools get inflation on their capital budgets, while districts do not. Last year, we discussed how the capital fund balance grew over time and how we acknowledged the balance was excessive, and we were creating a plan to bring it down. I will review those balances again and show how we're bringing those fund balances down to a recommended carryover percentage. So first, we have the capital budget history. Here's a little recap. As I mentioned, last year, the capital budget grew over time to excess M&O to capital transfers with no intended spending plan. The first 4 bullets are the same numbers I presented last year. Over those 4 years, you can see the capital budget balance fluctuate slightly and overall grow over that time. In 2001, we had some one-time COVID funding offset some of the technology spending we had budgeted for, which kept the budget balance higher than anticipated. As we discussed with the M&O budget, those are one-time dollars. While there was a slight savings to the 2021 budget, those one-time costs are going to be back into the budget in 2022, and you'll see that represented tonight. The 6th bullet takes into consideration the current year projected ending budget balance and next year's state allocation. We are still making expenditures, but this is a safe estimate at this point in time. It'll be the basis of the capital budget for this presentation. Lastly, in the 7th bullet, you'll see a drastic drop in estimated beginning capital budget balance. A large portion of this drastic drop is associated with the Higley High School classroom addition, and the fact that because we did not pass a bond, we are forced to budget this classroom addition out of our annual capital allocation. This was a large bring down of the budget. It was necessary in the fact that we were completely out of classroom space at Higley High. This was a student need. For reference, looking at, this was the only funding source the district had to fund those project needs. So for reference, looking at the 2024 estimated $12.7 million capital budget. This represents double the state allocation of roughly $6 million the district receives annually. This budget is conservative still, but will limit the district's ability to fund future major projects as we continue to see growth if the district does not pass a bond in the near future. So now looking at the 2023 budget as a whole, you should be familiar with the following template. The slide details the three main capital funds and the budgets for 2023 fiscal year. I will go into detail of each one of these lines on the preceding slides, but I do want to touch on a few areas in this template. So first, on the very top column, reading left to right, you'll notice the page number of the slide in which you can find more detail on. Next, you can see the spending category. Next to that is the DAA fund, also known as our annual state capital allocation. Next to that is the adjacent waste fund, which is a levied fund that's not a budgeted fund. Next to that is the remaining 2013 bond authorization, which you'll see is going to be fully expended this next fiscal year. So now I'll cover all the detail in between on the preceding slides, but I want to touch on the bottom where you'll see the total expenditures. This is the second to last blue highlighted row. It's the total expenditures per capital fund, and you'll see the budget is $20.9 million, which is the same as I presented on the previous slide. $1.9 million for adjacent ways, and again, we don't anticipate levying for more adjacent waste funding. And $3.8 million is for the 2013 bond authorization. Okay, so now if you're looking at the capital budget summary, we're going to start at the top and work through the detail. The district-wide capital budget is a culmination of a variety of district departments, including SPED, HR, public relations, and so forth. There's a total budget for all those departments of $56,000 from the capital budget. This addresses any capital needs they may have throughout the year. Next is the adjacent waste budget, which has been set at district-wide because currently there are no designated adjacent waste projects. There may be some expenditures in regards to the Higley Classroom addition, but we are still early in the design process, so we don't know if there may be implications to the fire lane that proceeds on the back of Higley High's campus. The district is setting aside $500,000 in unallocated for unforeseen circumstances. The times where we have had to tap into this budget are when we have large emergency maintenance needs, such as the lift stations that occurred at DO and Higley High. And then lastly, we talk about this at every financial conversation, the middle school leases. We are budgeting $4.4 million, but as I discussed in the M&O presentation, this will be funded from an M&O transfer to the capital budget. So proceeding on to some of the departments that have large capital budgets. First is educational services. And first up, assessment and student informations. They have an allocation of $465,000. This supports our student software needs, Canvas, as well as enrollment software, Synergy. There are also other assessment softwares the district uses that make up the majority of this funding, which also includes Florida Virtual Schools, which is our Higley Virtual Academy student instruction software. Next is the instructional aid budget of $450,000. This is used to purchase annual curriculum not included in textbook adoptions. So this includes supplementals such as HUSD's traditional curriculum, as well as, we just discussed this, dual language immersion curriculum. And then lastly, you'll see we're taking a year off from the textbook adoption. The textbook adoption, we're choosing to renew some of our adopted curriculum and prepare for a 2024 adoption. All right, transitioning to the IT budget. First, we can continue to see support for the maintenance of the one-to-one student-to-device ratio in the amount of $1.3 million. The district earlier this year completed the one-to-one device initiative. And any ongoing budget in this category is prioritized at maintaining these devices and/or adding new devices as student growth continues to occur at Higley Unified. The schools presented are approaching the 5-year lifespan for the Levano laptops, and the replacement includes Higley High School and Power Ranch for next year. Moving down the list, we are starting to slowly address the outdated teacher laptops that are no longer supported. What I mean by no longer supported is these devices are no longer under warranty, and the supplier will not repair the devices if they break. So the district has set aside $1.3 million to start to replace these outdated laptops. You can see the schools that have been identified for replacement include Williamsfield, Cortina, Chaparral, HTA, and Santan.
Mr. Moore, about what's the life of these laptops?
So 5 years for technologies is a typical rule of thumb. I'm not a technology guru, but I can tell you if I don't replace my phone in 5 years, it's outdated. The similar philosophy for laptops and student devices, they get a lot of wear and use. And by the time they approach 5 years, they're either outdated or, like I mentioned, no longer supported because that's how fast technology moves. Okay, next is the district's annual software budget. This supports a variety of district functions. The main ones include Microsoft, so Microsoft 365, all the applications that go with that, our district email that we utilize. Visions is our district financial software. This supports payroll, allows us to cut checks every year. Frontline is also another big one. That is a human resource software that supports the hiring of district employees. Lastly, the $75,000 allocation budgeted for safety and security is intended to hold status quo and only replace video cameras as needed. The allocation does have a budget to slowly replace the aging school intercom systems, but wide-scale replacement is largely contingent on a 22 bond proposal.
Do we have, I'm sorry, President Kaler, Mr. Moore, do we have the school picked? Because I was at a school this week and I was shocked to hear the intercom system. So there's 2 or 3 I've heard and none of them are good. So I don't know if we have the school picked already for that or if we're still working on picking that.
Yeah, I believe IT is still assessing the greatest need. I mean, there's a need throughout our district, but they're still determining that. Okay, moving on, maintenance and construction. The maintenance and construction budgets, the annual capital maintenance budget is $1.5 million next year, and it addresses general HVAC replacements. We have approximately 3 roofing recoats, 1 exterior building repaint, some general flooring replacements, custodial equipment, and other various capital items that are incurred throughout the year. One thing I've been working on with our interim maintenance director is really coming up with a list, much like we've talked about tonight, a detailed list of what is being funded from this budget. Our schools have been in dire need of knowing what is going to be happening on their campus, and we're close to sharing it with them, but we've done a lot of work in identifying every single dollar within this budget and knowing where it's going to go. So again, part of that rebuilding trust, we need to also rebuild our trust with our schools and let them know what needs are going to be addressed and when. Moving down, the annual grounds budget of $142,000 is budgeted to replace equipment only if it breaks and really only maintain the current conditions of the district landscaping. Again, any enhancements are largely contingent on a 2022 bond. And then lastly, understanding schools have large capital needs and cannot be funded from their allocation that we provide at the district level. We set aside $250,000 for schools to submit capital requests that can be funded from this allocation. These requests are prioritized on greatest need and are in a group setting, we narrow down these needs and let the schools know which requests are being funded for next year. So we just received all the requests, so we'll be moving through that process in the near future. All right, then, as we've discussed multiple times, we have one big construction project planned for 2023, and that's the classroom addition at Higley High School. We've identified Higley High School as the greatest need to student growth earlier this year and began down the path of hiring an architect. And now, as approved tonight, we have a contractor on board. We were able to budget $10 million for this project, which has the district fully exhausting the remaining 2013 bond authorization and allocating $6 million from our annual capital allocation, our DAA budget, towards this project. In this proposed 2022 bond, we would have a phase 2 for this campus, and that would be addressing some of the other needs that the campus potentially needs, including exterior paint, a potential gym expansion to accommodate the additional students, and other various items that are being discussed at our community meetings that are set aside previously. And then, as we've already mentioned tonight, the next community meeting is tomorrow night at Higley High School from 6 to 7 p.m. I will note the picture in the slide is an early rendition of the classroom edition. A full in-depth presentation of the design, when final, will be presented to the governing board, as well as the total cost of the building. So through the CMAR process that you approved tonight with the contractor, we begin negotiating what the building will cost and what we call a guaranteed maximum price, or a GMP. This does not allow for any change orders. Once they set the GMP, that is the final cost. We do potentially estimate this may come in under budget, but contingency and being safe, we set $10 million aside for this purpose. So this does include all furniture and equipment into this building. So yeah, the total building cost will be approximately probably $8 million, with another $2 million of potential furniture, equipment, everything needed to make this building operational.
President Kaler. Mr. Moore, the meeting tomorrow night, is that online, streamed as well?
It is not, it is in person only.
Okay.
We do share, if you were to provide your email address, you can reach out to me. We do share a follow-up of meeting notes through that. We do also share that with Mr. Fields, and I believe he pushes that out to his parent group as well through his communication.
Perfect. Thank you.
There's a third meeting, and there's a third meeting, so this is one of a series. So if you can't attend this one, there's still another one for you to be able to attend.
And we're actually also looking at adding a fourth meeting.
So there we go.
We've had a lot of input, so we will actually, everybody is heard.
I can actually not attend tomorrow. Is there any way you could send the email to us during the superintendent's report? Because that would be fabulous. I'm actually going to the Queen Creek State of the Town. So if we could get that pushed to us, that would be fantastic. Or at least me. I don't know if everybody else wants it. Okay, I spoke for all of us. I'm sorry.
We can certainly get that information.
Always happy to provide you the information.
All right, moving forward, in the 2013 bond, there was a transportation allocation. What is remaining is $300,000. Josh Crosby, the Director of Transportation, has identified his greatest needs of being 2 84-passenger buses. We're currently in the process of drafting a board agenda to bring to the next meeting. The reason you're seeing this item budget in 2023, as well as the bus purchase currently taking place, is because there's anywhere from a 4 to 6 month lead time on school buses. And this money was budgeted in the 2022 capital budget as well. It's just taken a long time to identify what the greatest need was. So the $300,000 remaining budget, as I alluded to, was included in the 2022 capital plan that we presented. Next is a $50,000 allocation for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. This budget is largely used for engine replacements that we can do in-house. Any other repairs and maintenance needs are funded by the M&O budget. That is an M&O expense. So. And then lastly, a $150,000 allocation is budgeted for the replacement of the maintenance vehicles. So this is our white fleet, our support service vehicles. The budget is prioritized by replacing the oldest vehicle in the fleet, typically in excess of 20 plus years, and they're no longer cost effective to maintain. Okay, our schools. So New last year was a priority to provide schools with more resources to address those smaller needs that don't get prioritized within the district level budgets. I personally established quarterly budget meetings in which I meet with each principal to ensure spending is appropriate, but also help them guide through proper resources to address their school needs through their school allocated budgets. The largest budget available to schools is their FF&E budget, which stands for Furniture, Fixtures, and Equipment. $572,000 equates to $45 per student, and that's based on a 100th day ADM, which is also where we're funded from in our annual budget. Every school has done something different with their current year allocation, and this allocation has been well received from principals. Schools have also received a designation for library books and resources. We're budgeting for that, for $63,000, which equates to $5 per student. This allocation is designated to replace library books and/or digital resources, as well as enhance their library spaces.
Mr. Moore, does the librarian have full, or our media specialists get control of that, or is that a principal decision?
Yeah, well, I should say some of our instructional coach, Ms. Valerie Thomas, has worked with our media techs and our media, I believe they're called techs, excuse me if I'm, but yeah, they set the priorities for this budget and they communicate that with the principal.
Great, thank you.
All right, moving down the list. Capital Athletics, this was established last year and will continue at the middle and high schools in the same amount of $100,000. The budget was used largely this year to replace aging and worn athletic uniforms and equipment. And
Mr. Moore?
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. It has to do with, and maybe Mr. Lotzenheiser can speak into this as well, because he was so wanting us to ask him a question tonight. The helmet budget for our football teams, does that come out of this $100,000 every year? I know that's a huge expense, yes?
No. I can, you want to take it? Okay.
Okay, he's got it. Mr. Moore's got it.
So this isn't the only budget ADs have in terms of addressing some of those needs, such as helmet replacement. I can tell you the high schools have utilized this to address the helmet replacement conditioning and such like that. And they've then transitioned to using some of their participation money for other needs throughout the sports. So,
thank you. I just have a quick question. Is the athletic fund, the equipment, is that dispersed evenly among the teams as far as, no? Okay.
So it's dispersed to the athletic director, and then they determine the greatest need at the school.
Okay, but it's based on need, not want. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I do believe, and Mr. Lotzenheiser can certainly address that, but
so when we break down our allocation for the athletics, when you look at the 100,000, actually, when the two high schools each get 40,000, and the middle schools get 10,000 because of the relative size of the departments and what they need to do. 40,000 for capital specifically goes to the athletic director, and they're going to determine what happens from there. One thing that we have done, and Mr. Moore talked about other funds that become available. When participation fees now are paid, traditionally it would all go to the athletic director and they would have sole control over it. However, we have split that now so that $50 per student goes directly to the coach and within there, so they have some direct control over the spending of what that is. And so they're getting an allocation directly determined based upon the number of students, so the coaches have control over that. So that might go more toward wants rather than needs, because the coaches are looking at that, where the athletic director is looking at the whole program as a whole from the school perspective.
Thank you.
President Kaler, members of the board, we wanted to touch base about that instrument replacement. Some great work happened in this 2019 school year. Bob Edgar kind of took the lead with the Conselmer group, and he worked with all the band and orchestras teachers throughout the year, throughout the entire district. And that year, they did an inventory of the state of our instruments, band and orchestra, and they utilized a rubric that actually didn't just go by value of year, but actually condition, so that we had an understanding of what was our inventory, and we determined it was pretty extensively in disrepair, or in old age, or in great need. And so from that inventory, they prioritized a multi-year, knowing if we could create an allocation every year, which had not happened previously, an allocation every year, we've determined the highest need that we use across the district for this program, which is a huge thing. And so this truly is to the work of the entire, our employee group in this area who work together to help us figure this out and to put this together and prioritize. So that's something that's a success for us, because this is a big piece in our district that didn't have a dedicated funding source every year or two, that this will now be our second year where we're being able to revitalize, replace, and improve our condition of our instruments, and this is huge, huge for us.
So it summarizes the school's designations in which they receive capital funding. Finishing up here, we have financial services oversees the warehouse, and we have identified an opportunity to increase some efficiencies of the warehouse operations, as well as potentially save some operating budget. So a budget of $50,000 has been set aside to address additional racking within the warehouse, which would allow the district to purchase larger volumes of supplies, potentially recognizing M&O savings by buying in bulk. This will also allow the district to ensure supplies to schools stay the same, in which we can get a leg up on supply chain issues by stocking up more on those high demand items, such as toilet paper, trash can liners, etc. And then lastly, the budget item, a budget balance carry forward of $1.8 million. This represents about 20% of our district's annual capital budget, which I've alluded to is approximately $6 million a year. This is still a conservative carryover amount. As I mentioned earlier, we're projecting to take a bigger jump down with this capital budget. A big portion of the jump comes from one-time expenses that we are funding from our capital allocation. So you can anticipate that we would maintain at least a similar level of carry forward in years going forward. And then, oh, go ahead.
President Kaler, members of the board, though, you can see the importance, though, of us getting a bond to pass to prepare for the growth, because the chunk of our budget coming down, to get ahead of this, you can't rely on our capital budget to be there to build classroom space at the cost that it costs to build classroom space if we don't have a bond to address that. So hence looking at our priorities at this point being connected to this piece too as well when we talk about both of these funds.
And again, this should look familiar. This is our budget calendar. On the next meeting, we also have the third review of the bond, but we do have as well the second review of the M&O budget. I think we're going to focus exclusively on the aggregate expenditure limit. We still do not have a solution yet, but we'll focus around the district's plans and how we intend to address the limit within Higley.
This week, one of the things that we proposed or put on our website under our announcements is just a little infographic about aggregate expenditure limit and encouraging people to reach out to our PR department, our public relations department for more questions. One of the things we're trying to do is there's this delicate dance between keeping people informed and causing pandemonium and panic. We've obviously shared this with our employees. We'll be sharing it as part of our summary again. Obviously, as we continue to move forward, our next meeting will spend an awful lot of time on what does this mean to us if we don't have resolution from the state at that point.
Dr. Foley, Superintendent Hoffman spent her whole presentation on it, and it was very good. I hope it reached those people who are making the decisions.
Just finishing up real quick, March 9th, we'll bring a third review as well as a tentative approval so we can allow the issuance of contracts for next fiscal year. I understand a lot is still up in the air, but it is important to get ahead of contract issuance so we can ensure we are not only competitive with other districts, but also so we can staff accordingly for next fiscal year. At that time, I'll also present a second review of the capital budget that I reviewed tonight. I will present a scaled-down approach. I won't go into so much detail, but if something were to change, I will bring that up. April 20th, much like the M&O review, we do ask for a tentative approval of the capital budget so we can get a head start on some of those long lead items that take several months to procure. And then lastly, just our legal dates in which we have to propose and adopt our 23 budget. So with that, I'll take any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you so much for the detailed report. We always appreciate your wisdom and sharing with us all the things finances. All right, we're going to move on to 8.1. I move that the governing board ratify the updated 2021-2022 Certified Performance Pay Plan.
Second.
This was presented to us already. Is there any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to 8.2. I move that the governing board approve the award of pre-construction services for request for qualification, the RFQ number 22-03-23 for the Higley High School project to Chase Building Team.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
President Kaler, members of the board, I just want to make a brief comment. This agenda item is authorizing $70,000 for Chase Building to come in and establish where utility lines are, where they need to do drops, network drops, et cetera, so they can propose us a GMP that is final. This is a different process in which we're building this than the field house that was built at Williams Field. And also, in addition, this is under the board's threshold, but we just want to be transparent in this process as we proceed through this construction project.
Yes, the behind-the-scenes RFQs are very in-depth, so that we may not see here, but it's been going on, and we appreciate that. Was there a second? Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Future agenda items. Again, we have a lot coming up in the spring, besides just our finances, our strategic plan, and Life Beyond High School Portrait of a Graduate, our wellness initiative, and our virtual academy updates coming in the summer. Is there anything else the board would like to see in the upcoming months?
President Kaler, Dr. Foley, is it possible to get an update with the safety plan, especially with some instances that we've had recently, just how things are going? Is it working? Are there, I don't know if that's to be an executive session or not, or what we can say.
President Kaler, Board Member Anderson, those are some of those annual things that we'll probably bring back to you. So what we can do is establish it into our annual calendar that we will have those updates for you. A lot of work has been done in social emotional as well as safety, and so we will be bringing that information to you. But we'll add it as part of our annual component too, so that we'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Okay, I didn't mean to sound premature. I was just knowing there's a lot that has happened, and I just curious how it's going.
How we're coming. We will be happy to provide you that update. Some of those, again, those annual ones may have to be an executive session for summary, but some can be whole group. So we'll determine what we can do in like a work study session and what we would do in executive session also meets our annual calendar. Mm-hmm.
I know Board Member Wilson talked about the $1.6 million cuts that the schools could face, and I know that if you, 16.1, sorry, what did I say? Oh, sorry, yes, $1 billion, sorry. I just encourage people to pay attention and to encourage their legislators to vote properly for that, so that the schools, I know we aren't facing furloughs as we talked about during last week's meeting, but other schools and districts could face devastating furloughs.
Yes, don't get me started. I think I stated my opinions last time on that. Also, Dr. Foley, I know that there was we talked about it briefly, and it was in our status about some damages happening to our southern schools. And I think it's really important that our parents of those areas are made aware that this is, this is costing the district money. And I don't know if this is something that goes out in a newsletter or if it's something that is a separate, just notification that, we all need to, it takes a village. I know that in Cortina alone, there's parents that are always posting, do you know where your kids are? Because I just took a picture of them. And, then you go into the whole, well, that's shaming the child and you shouldn't be putting their picture out. And so there's a lot of things that go with it, but our schools are very important to us. And we do so much for our safety and our security and our cameras and following up. But just maybe if there's some kind of communication that could go out to our communities, just stating that this is a problem and it needs to stop, if at all possible.
And it's costing us a lot of money.
Yeah, President Keller, one of the things earlier in the year we had talked about, particularly when social media had specific TikTok challenges that were being prevalent, we were seeing an increase. And it seems as though while there hasn't been a specific TikTok challenge, that social media presence of devious or recorded acts are still prevalent. And awareness of that and asking people, reminding them of our safe hotline to report information for us to investigate so that we can do so. I know that individual school sites have also been sending this out in messages from the principal, but we can also continue to look at our global communication and just reminders. One of the things we also notice how important it is too as we approach toward our seniors and graduation and senior prank season, all those things and reminders. Those are sort of timely topics to continue to keep on our communication with our families.
Thank you very much.
President Kaler?
Yes, Mrs. Reese.
Along those same lines, when we have areas that have some vandalism, crime, some issues, maybe could we reach out to the HOAs if they have newsletters that they put, out to their community, maybe just a small information, hey, watch out, the school was, vandalized or something like that, just as I know our community puts it out, if there's a particular area, like this park, we're seeing a lot of activity in, maybe we can reach out and partner with them for them to drop a little note in their HOA communication.
Cortina HOA has put out a lot of information because they were breaking, kids were destroying our lights in our gazebos in the park. So there was a lot that went on in the last couple of weeks on that topic. I don't know about Sossaman so much, but I know like Cortina did put some stuff out there. And our HOAs are in the same boat as we are, and they're very upset, so.
Yeah, so maybe sharing some of this information to make other community members aware as well.
Okay, with that said, I move that we adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Have a good evening.